Welcome to the first episode of Our Ball, Our Game, a brand new podcast focusing on women's football in Scotland, hosted by me, your host, Jessica Elliott. Today, I sat down with Rose Reilly and David McKinney to discuss what the future has in store for the women's game in this country. So, get comfortable and enjoy. I'm here with David McKinney and Rose Reilly, and today we're going to be discussing and getting some insight from everyone into the future of women's football in Scotland, the Scottish Women's Premier League, and what the future could really hold now that clubs like Rangers and Celtic are getting more investment. The question we're going to be asking is, will the other clubs fall away, or will they be able to keep up with the top dogs? So, Rose, could I get your opinions on that?
Well, I think David would be better answering the first. I think he's more knowledgeable about the men's game and how it evolved or it didn't, a certain aspect, and then I'll come in. Thanks.
That's very kind of you, Rose.
It's okay, David.
Looking back at the history of Scottish football, the men's game started, as we know, around about 1880s, round about that. And at the time, with Queen's Park, with teams like Vale of Leven, Dumbarton were strong teams or strong areas in Scotland, and different people would win the league, would win the cup because there was parity there because it was an amateur game. But when Celtic and Rangers became professional and other teams became professional, and they started to generate a big support, it changed the nature of the game. And Celtic and Rangers had basically made an agreement, I think it was about 1920s or so, that Rangers we'll go for might even before that, we'll go for the home support, whereas Celtic agreed they'll go for the immigrant Catholic support that come from Ireland. So once they'd done that, with, I don't want to say two opposing forces, but with two sides there that grew and grew and grew, they became way much bigger than the other teams in Scotland. So the others fell away. Queen's Park were amateur, and were amateur until about 5 years ago. So they could not keep up the number of Scottish Cups they won, the number of leagues they won, and others found that was the same. I look at the women's game now, and I see Glasgow City have won so many leagues. From the top of my head, maybe it's about 13 out of the last 15 or so. Celtic and Rangers are now grouping in a sense. They are becoming stronger. They're putting more resources, more finance into their games. And I just wonder, and I see this year, Glasgow City are kind of falling behind a wee bit. I wonder if this is the start of Celtic and Rangers then becoming the more dominant force in the women's game in Scotland, and teams like Glasgow City maybe dropping down a wee bit. And it's just, I can see history repeating itself because of just those factors that might come into play.
I mean, just to give an idea, right now, 14 games have been played in the SWPL this season. Rangers top the table with 40 points, Celtic second with 39, and Glasgow City with 32. So already this season, we're starting to see them drop down the table a bit. They've lost to Rangers. Off the top of my head, they've lost to Rangers once, and they've drawn to them, and they've lost to Celtic twice.
They've lost more games already this season than they did in the whole of last season. That's a kind of telling factor at this stage. So, I wonder if maybe the process, the history of Scottish football for the women is going to then mirror the history we had for the men.
Well, I would like to say something there. The difference from you, David and Jessica, I've watched Glasgow City playing this season, and Rangers and Celtic, of course, my team. Glasgow City are actually playing quite well. It's not as if they weren't up for their opposition, Rangers and Celtic. Unfortunately, it depends the way the ball rose in football. And I think we have to say thanks to Laura Montgomery, who's did a massive work at Glasgow City. But obviously, they're still there. Celtic and Rangers are always going to be bigger now because of the support they've got, because of the investment, most of all. There's also a good setup at Hearts. Hearts have really got a great setup. I'm friends with Anne Park and Budge a wee bit, and they've got a great setup of young girls coming through at Hearts. They've got their academies and everything, as is Celtic and Rangers. So I think that's the future. And I'm sure Glasgow City, I've not got much knowledge about their academy, but I can say is, the women's game, it's like planting a big tree. And it's amazing. You look at it, this is going to be amazing. But if there are no roots to that tree, it's going to fall down one day. Now, our roots are in the academy. Like Celtic, Rangers and Glasgow City to an extent. I've got a lot of foreign players. Of course we need them. We need to learn off them, and they can learn off us. But I think the future's in our academies, and that's what we have to learn more. Like the men's team, Celtic and Rangers, I don't think they've learnt much about that. about their academies. We want to see young Scots coming through. And I would like to think that the women's game have got a better future that way than the men's game. Even though I don't like comparing the men's game to the women's game because there's no comparison. The men are one thing, we're the other. We don't like it compared. It's our game, it's our ball. We'll keep our aim. So basically, yeah, we need to invest more in the academies, and then we'll see who's best between Celtic, Rangers or Glasgow City and Hearts that are upcoming.
It's also, I think, when the games are on television, showing live on television, I think it's role models now for young girls, because 10 years ago, maybe they weren't there. And girls were, football, like football, but where to go? And Rose, you're the perfect example of that. How do you play football when there isn't that infrastructure? But now it's kind of there. There are role models for young girls to say, look, you can do this. You can be a football player. You can earn money and earn a living playing football. It's a different ball game from certainly from your days, Rose.
Absolutely. I go along to Barrafield quite a lot with Celtic women. In Fran, the coach, she's got a lot of time, and Michael, he's got a lot of time for the young girls that are coming to see them, or the young academy girls. And I brought Stuart and Anik, the young girls, along to Parkhead, and they're lending us their coaches and their knowledge. And of course, the young girls are looking at this as role models, as we're at Parkhead, we can do this. Now, I'm speaking about Parkhead because I'm there, I can actually see it. And it is all about visibility, and it's only way forward is to get the young girls involved. They should be involved in the match days as well. Like when I go and see Scotland women at Hampden, the last game I was at, it was practically empty. I mean, I would fill it with all the young girls from the teams in Scotland, the schools, whatever. Even a token fee of £1 or don't even let them pay, so that they can see that they're heroes. They can see them in action. And then they know that one day that they could play for their country. But if we're locking them out, or they're overpriced. I mean, I love watching the games at Hampden. I think it's massive that the women can play at Hampden. But I think it's maybe too big for us. That's me talking about the tree without the roots. I think we should be growing gradually. Places like Paisley, unfortunately, Rugby Park at Kilmarnock, it's not a grass pitch. But I'm sure there's a lot of stadiums, or even better still, I'm more for it that the Scotland team could travel. We go to Aberdeen, we can go to Hearts, we can go wherever, and that's where we create a fan base. We should be taking our girls all over Scotland and showing what we're all about.
Because role models are so important for football. I mean, I'm a Celtic fan myself, and I go to some Celtic women games, and at the end of the games, the girls make a point to, speak to every fan that is taking the time to come out, and you can tell that means a lot to the kids who make up a big portion of that support, which is good, and it's great that they now have those role models, but I completely agree that they shouldn't be, priced out essentially of being able to have role models.
So what we're doing, we're pricing the kids out from playing. We're pricing the kids out from seeing, so there ain't going to be a future if we're going like that.
I think the live television's helping, to be honest. You can see women's football more on television. There's highlights, there's live games. That will obviously help. But you're right. You have to be at the game and see the game.
Yeah,
really
David, but we're not
appreciate
just talking about the women's game here. For example, I was doing a campaign at Hampden the other week there, for the men's team. We have to pay to watch them play. I turn on STV and have to watch England. No, thank you. I'm not wanting that. I want to see the Scotland team. I want to see us playing without paying.
Yeah, the television rights.
It gets so even for any audience that we can actually see our national team is ridiculous. But thanks to BBC Alba, we can see the women at least.
Jessica, you've seen some of these Celtic games. Have you seen an increase and improvement in the skill level and the professionalism as the teams play?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even teams like Partick Thistle, specifically this season, obviously they're not really at the level of Rangers, Celtic and Glasgow City just yet, but there's been a vast improvement in the Partick Thistle team from last year to this year, so that really tells me that other teams can maybe get to the points that our team, that like Celtic, Rangers and Glasgow City can. And I think that there has been an improvement in skill, especially in the past 3 years, and that's likely why, attendance has increased at these games too. And another part of that is visibility. And I, for one, am just very glad that, we can watch Scotland women play on on Alba, and I'm pretty sure there's at least one SWPL game televised every
Yes.
week or every other week.
It's interesting. I watched BBC Alba, and you think it's spoken in Gaelic. You think, oh, this will be awful. It's actually quite. You can listen to it. It's actually quite a nice rhythm. The commentary is that same kind of rhythm that you have.
It's made me want to learn it.
Actually, all right. You can. It's not off-putting to hear the Gaelic when you don't really understand it. I quite like it. Actually, it's almost hypnotic and then rhythmic. The way the commentators speak, I think they do it really
It's
well.
like talking about that. It's like me watching the England games. I turn the volume down, and it's not garlic.
I wonder what the potential is for the women's game in Scotland.
I think there's great potential, but we need to invest more. Sport's all about investment. That's why I don't think we've got a lot of champions in Scotland at any level, at any sport, apart from Andy Murray. But Andy Murray and his brother, hats off to them. But I think the clout, the money to go and train in Barcelona when they were like 15 years of age. We don't have this. We don't have the facilities in Scotland. I think the mentality is, if us Scots, if we win something, we're trying to excuse ourselves. Oh, sorry if I won, kind of thing, as if we shouldn't be there. Do you know what I mean? But actually, we should be there. We should be conquering the world. Why not? But we have to invest more. We need more facilities. That's about it.
Stuck with the weather we've got as well. I don't know if you're thinking the indoor facilities here, Rose, but the weather doesn't help very often. We're in a world now where people are on phones, they're on tablets, they play games. We're in a college here, and we know there's students who'll sit till 3-4 o'clock in the morning playing video games. They're not getting out and about. They're half asleep the following day, and that. Rose, you probably would have played football all day, every day. I did the same in our day. Our mothers used to say, right, away you go and play football. We'd come back from playing football when it was too dark to see the ball. That's the only thing that would stop us playing. I think it's a different world now in that sense, that youngsters have got other things. There's so many more attractions, despite as well as the football.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, we're in a digital world, and it's all about visibility, I think in the wrong way. You know what I mean? They're very visible without doing anything. We were doing something to be visible. Yeah. So we've got all your, I'm not really savvy in anything, you could help me this, and Jessica, but all your TikToks and all this kind of stuff. But then it makes even the players who are obscenely rich on these social media sites, and I know it's wrong, well, maybe it isn't wrong, but they can aspire to them as well. I mean, they've got everything, but they've got nothing.
I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about investment in the women's game. Yeah. Once again, speaking from what I know, I suppose, but on a club level specifically, the Celtic AGM was recently, and the club had recorded record profits for the last year and record revenue. A lot of people have been asking, myself included, how much of that revenue is actually going to be given to the women, because eventually we're going to need to improve wages and transfer fees down here, up here, I suppose, if we are to compete with even England. Like last season, Celtic had Natasha Flint. We tried to keep her, but she went to Liverpool because she was being offered too much money to turn down. And it was our childhood club. But there's just, even in the women's game now, there is an element of, battling with wages, money. But will Scotland ever improve in that aspect?
Well, Jessica, football's a business now. You know what I mean? So first of all, it's a business. And then I'm sure most of the board are Celtic supporters anyway. I don't mean that the Celtic women will be a different entity from the men, but yeah, they're at a different level. Before, I was against women's football needing help from the men's game. I'm more aware now that we need the men. We need the men's game to help us in our way, right? So if they could actually give us a hand to stand on our own 2 feet, we need everything that can give us. They can give us their facilities, which they do. Celtic's absolutely amazing with their girls and coaches and whatever, and they're set up. But the wages, obviously, absolutely no comparison to the men. But until that we can bring in our own money, that is going to be difficult. So we have to start bringing in our own money to survive. And then we could see a difference. We need sponsors. We need the big sponsors. Because a lot of the men's sponsors, like Celtic, I can't remember the name, but it's like a betting system. The women don't want that. We've not got that. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that's where the money is.
Yeah.
So this is a tricky one. So it is down to the sponsors, and who we are going to choose is to be the women's sponsors. and it's never the same as the men's.
Yeah, I think it's always money talks in football, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I wonder, would the Celtic fans who support the men's team be happy if they put a whack of money into the women's team, but Celtic then didn't compete as well certainly in Scotland? I'm going to say Champions League, but they're not really competing in Champions League at the moment. It's so hard for them. But, would they welcome that if it made them less powerful, if you like, couldn't afford the same kind of players? So I don't know, you're right, Rose, where does the money come from? Sponsors is probably the way ahead. Also, if the attendances can go up, with the women's game are looking for the same money as the men, looking for parity. And I kept thinking, as you say, it's a business. If you bring in the same crowds, if you bring in the same sponsorship, you bring in the same money, yes, you can have parity.
Aye, but this is going to be difficult, David, because, for example, it's also a sense of belonging. We're home games. Celtic's home games is played in Airdrie. Nothing against Airdrie, a great setup and whatever. But it's no Glasgow. You kind of get a fan base here. Rangers are the same. Where is it they play? Broadwood. Rangers are the same. I'm sure they would like to be nearer Ibrox or whatever. It's only normal. That's where the support is. But we're going away, so we can't get a support. We're travelling away for our support. It's us that have to play where the support is. No the other way about.
Yeah, Celtic women play their home games at Airdrie. I'm a season ticket holder for Celtic women, but I can't make it to most of the home games because Airdrie just isn't feasible to get to from where I live.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
But I think we really could build such a great support in Glasgow if there was some sort of relocation.
Absolutely.
But I suppose there's also, logistics with that because...
It's finding somewhere, Shawfield is more like, I think it's down for demolition now. We've got Crown Point.
We're not going there then.
Crown Point.
Excuse me, David. We're wanting to stay at the Arts Stadium.
We're Celtic.
You're
taking it somewhere to demolish it. Thank you.
If it was being rebuilt, it might be an option. Crown Point is being rebuilt. I think Clyde are actually going to move into there, they hope, once they have rebuilt it. So it's finding that place to play in Glasgow. I don't know if Glasgow's got all that many places like stadiums or grounds as such, where Celtic or Rangers can say, look, we can play here, we can get a crowd in, we've got a couple of stands, whatever. I think that's, Rose, you speak about resources.
I know that the Celtic women train at Barrowfield, and they are creating another football pitch, and I'm sure that there's a stand there as well, which would eventually be, I can't say this 100%, is going to be the Celtic women's ground. The Celtic men were playing it in Rome against Lazio the other day there. And one of the guys that worked for Celtic, Chris Duffy, I got him to get in touch with Betty Bavignoli, who's my friend, and she's the president of Roma Femminile, the Roma women's team. And I think they were going to catch up with each other because Roma have got their own ground. They play at the Olimpico, where the big men play now and again at some Champions League game, but they've got their own ground now. They've set up their floodlights, their wee stand and whatever. It's more compact, so they sail out, and Roma won the league, the Serie A last season, and they're kind of paving the way now in the Italian game. So I've got Betty and Chris in communication with each other, and I think that's the way forward.
Interesting. How is the Italian game? How you
the
played?
Women?
You played in Italy so many years ago. How has that developed over the years?
It didn't develop well because after I was nearly finished playing, it was a wee bit before that. Before FIFA and UEFA didn't recognise women's football, so every nation had their own federation, their own association, their own rules and whatever. But globally, it was all kind of the same thing. Then FIFA and UEFA come over, decided they were taking over the women's game. In some nations it was much better. In some nations it wasn't, like Italy, perhaps like Scotland. I felt as if they just put the women's game in a corner then. You know what I mean? They were deciding how far it was going to go. They put it beside like the five-a-side games or whatever, the wheelchair football, nothing against that. But you know what I mean? They put us in a corner. They definitely did in Italy, and I think to a certain extent in Scotland, where we couldn't grow because they were deciding for us. Basically, I would like women to decide for women, not men to decide for women. I'll give you the example of the Women's World Cup. I did quite a lot of Zoom interviews with Sky Television when England were playing in Australia. And Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, so that the holy grail of the global game, the football game, men and women, he come over for the opening ceremony as you do, and then he disappeared for a couple of weeks. Now, that wasn't good because the World Cup was in Qatar, the men. He was there every occasion, every game, if physically possible, but he went away at Australia. So that kind of shows you that the women's game is not considered in the same level, at that level. Then when he come back, there was some unrest with some of the women's team, and he actually gave an interview saying the women should pick their battles. And I asked if I could have an interview with him, saying, what battles, Johnny? Football's a game, not a war. What battles do we have to pick?
Thank you for listening to the first episode of Our Ball, Our Game, where myself, Rose and David gave our thoughts on the future of women's football in Scotland. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.